Thank you for joining us today at Wildly Undivided. If you enjoy these studies, hit the thumbs up and subscribe.
Ecclesiastes 8, higher authority. In the Bible, I think there's people in the Bible, historical people, that we would look at and we'd say those people are our heroes. Who would that be? Who would you say is like a hero in the Bible for you? Joshua, it's a good one. Jesus, the ultimate hero. Paul, Abram, Daniel, David. What is it that all those people had that is universal to them? Character, faith, Holy Spirit. Those are definitely universal. Leaders, definitely sinners. No, they had ups and they had downs. They had goods and they had bads. I'd venture to say that they did things in the right way, at the right time, the way that we would like to think we would do it. And I would define that as wisdom. When you look around at people that you admire and you watch them and you listen to them, they're confronted with a scenario that's difficult and you watch how they handle it. There's times when you just kind of go, wow, like I want to be like that. It's the wisdom of knowing how to handle themselves, how to speak clearly, how to respond to somebody. There's a level of maturity that comes with wisdom that looks almost like a superpower. If you look at the president and you say, wow, the president is wise, like I love the things that they're doing or that they're performing, or the reverse, like the president is not wise, I think what they're doing is foolish and ignorant or whatever it might be, I think that is a defining factor, that they are making decisions. And those decisions are either wise or foolish. And I think Ecclesiastes gets to a point where he looks around and just says like, wow, like think about what it really means to be wise. And I know I said this earlier about contentment. It's a superpower. It's a power from God. But he's going to start in verse 1 and it's kind of like, who really is wise? Like, who can obtain to this power? So let's read it. Who is like the wise, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom make his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed. The concept of wisdom being a difficult thing to obtain, so difficult, in fact, you're questioning, like, is it possible? And then he says, being able to interpret something. Why is it important to interpret? So it's almost like saying, do you have the answer to the question? And wisdom would say, well, what is the question? How do you interpret information? How can you comprehend a situation? To interpret is to clearly perceive truth. If there is a thing to be held, are you capable of seeing it? That's interpretation. So, who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed. What does that mean? Man's wisdom, face, shining, hardness, face, changed. I would say it is composure. It's being able to endure, being able to be stable, to put on a smile when everybody would expect a frown, and not hypocritically, not like, oh, I think everybody expects me to frown, so I'm going to smile to throw it in their face. No. It's just the simple fact that when you have wisdom, you can be confident, that your face will radiate with confidence. You're stable. You know exactly how to handle the situation. And 99% of the time, the only reason why you know how to handle the situation is because you have been there and you have done that. So it comes through the difficulty, the toil, the struggle, making the mistakes, and now obtaining wisdom through experience. And now your face shines and it is changed. It is changed from hardness, right? Almost like a sternness. And I go through this every so often because I get twists and turns and hits out of left field all day long. Like I walk into a situation, I never know what's going to happen. I could get great news, I could get really bad news, or I could get no news at all. I just don't know. My day involves me walking around, stumbling into problems or solutions. That's all I do. There was a time, because of the stress level, that my face was very stern, and I'm not struggling, but I'm consternated. I'm just fixated in one direction with one purpose, and my mind is only on one thing. And it's very difficult to shift from this side to that side and be amiable and adjustable. And I believe what he's expressing is that hardness of face can relax. You can be struggling with a very difficult, stressful situation, and then all of a sudden you're confronted with a little toddler, and you can just become a ray of sunshine. That you can leave behind the stress because wisdom allows you to shift gears. All right, but those are skills that are developed over time. We are going to look at wisdom under subjection. What do I mean by that? Wisdom under subjection. It is another party having influence over you, but it's having authority over you. You are under somebody else. There is an authority that is higher than you, and you are subjected to them. You are subject to obedience or to their decision making, right? So we are subjected to the law. When you're speeding down the freeway and the cop pulls you over, it is the authority of the law that you are subjected under. So we're going to see how wisdom acts with authority. When you are not the most powerful being, what does wisdom do? It's humble. That is the application. Humble yourself, submit yourself to God, and He will exalt you. Submit is subjection. It's the same thing. Place yourself under. One, you are subjected, you are placed under. To submit is to place yourself under. Willingly to humble yourself. Subjected is you're forced. You don't have a choice. So in this scenario, what we're about to read, there's no options here. You can react in wisdom or in folly, but you are subjected. If the president shows up here and he says, thus and such and do such a thing, we have the Constitution to back us up, but that hasn't always been around. If you didn't have the Constitution and the president showed up, you do what the president says, period. You are subjected to the president's whims. And that's what he's going to talk about as a king. Verse 2, I say, keep the king's command because of God's oath to him. What does that mean? Keep the king's command. Do what he says. Be obedient. So wisdom here, first of all, is subjected to a king. And when the king says it, wisdom obeys it. So a prime example is your boss says, go over here and do such a thing. And, I want you to do this and then do this and then do this. And you know what wisdom says? You got it. I'll obey your command. I think being in the military, you know this really well. Like obeying a command is what, the utmost thing? Is that like, that just gets drilled into you, right? Yeah. There's no such thing as disobeying a direct order. That's court-martial. Yeah. That's like prison, right? So here's the king telling you what to do. And wisdom says, you got it. No problem. Verse 3, be not hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. So B says, be not hasty to go from his presence. What is that talking about? There's something about respect and reverence. And so if we read the book of Esther, so Esther, the whole principle of coming before the king, even as the queen, as the second in command to the king, not necessarily in command, but to the second to the king, you can't come quickly before the king. You have to actually ask permission. And if you go in and upset him, you could just be killed. So there's something about coming into the king's presence. It must be done a very meaningful way. Also, leaving the king's presence must be done in a meaningful way. It can't be done like, okay, you got it. Yes, sir. And you turn around and run away. It's like you wait, you listen, there's proceedings. You don't just come in and out of the presence of the king. You use decorum and you would come in, you would listen, you would take all the orders, you would do whatever needs to take place, and then you would just wait. There's a level of respect. It's patient presence. Like, you know what? I'm here to serve you. I'm not just here to come and go and try to get something from you. I am here to serve. So until you tell me and dismiss me, I'll leave. So we need to be, wisdom is a patient presence. And I struggle with this one because like, when it comes to work, I don't want to be a presence. I want to do my job and just leave. You know the people who hang out after work, the people who spend time at work after everybody else just to like talk and linger and whatever. That's not me. I'm like, you know what? I did mine. I'm out of here. Like, I like you guys as human beings created in God's image, but I don't like you that much. I prefer my family in my life. So I think that there's something to be said about slowing down, being present, and respecting just being there with the people in authority. Okay, part B of 3, it says, do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. Who is he and doing whatever he pleases? He's the king. So the king has what? Supreme power. And if he has supreme power, do you want to get in the way of that shotgun? So do you want to stand in the way of an evil cause? Do you want to be like, hey, Mr. King, I just came up with this idea. I think it'd be really brilliant if we just said, you know what? Nobody can pray except to the king for 1 month. Nobody can pray to any other god except to the king. You know what that's doing? That's creating an evil cause. It was used against Daniel because there was an evil man who wanted and conspired to kill Daniel. And so he got in the king's ear and he whispered. He created an evil path and he got the king to follow it. Well, lo and behold, the king discovers it and all this different stuff. What happened to that man? Now, in Daniel's example, he wasn't doing anything evil, but evil was against him, and he was losing the battle, but still standing against it. So he stood with a higher authority. Because we are wisdom under subjection. We are all under some level of authority. So we have to recognize the layers of that authority and how to respond in each scenario. 3B is talking about dodging fickle choices. The king can be swayed one way or another, and you don't want to be caught in the crosshairs. So it's kind of going back to that interpretation. Who can interpret a thing? How do you know what the king is going to do? Well, wisdom. Being able to perceive the situation and getting out of dodge. Literally getting away from the evil, whatever's taking place. Verse 4, for the word of the king is supreme, and who may say to him, what are you doing? So this is reverence for authority. No one can speak against a supreme authority. If the king says, the sky is blue, you say, okay, the sky is blue. If the king says the sky is purple, you say, okay, the sky is purple. He is the supreme authority. And this is a representation of God because what God says is true is true. And I think that's a very difficult pill to swallow, particularly because we know the sky is not purple. So when it's blue, you want to fight and rebel. But listen, who can say that to the king? Who is the one who can argue with the king? You take your life in your own hand. I like how you said that. My opinion doesn't matter. My perspective doesn't matter. And I deal with this a lot because let's say we're building a project with a general contractor that we're also building 3 other projects with. My little project is not that important in the grand scheme of things. My project's gonna net us, $1 million. But we're also building a project that's gonna net us $10 million. Now on my little project, the owner of the company says, you know what? We're gonna give them and do them a favor and we're gonna lose $100,000 by doing them a favor. And I'm throwing a fit. And I'm saying to him, what are you doing? We're going to lose $100,000 on this job. And you know what he tells me? I don't care because we're going to lose $100 million if we lose them as a client. So we're going to lose $100,000 to save $100 million over the next 5 years. And you don't know that. Exactly. So your opinion doesn't matter because they're playing a different chessboard. God knows what he's doing. The king is working a different angle, a different game. So who can say to them, what are you doing? Now, thankfully, in our society, God has given us the rights and the ability to raise our hands and say, what are you doing? We get to vote. We get to participate. And I think people miss that this is such a miracle throughout history that 99% of the time you have a supreme ruler who does whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want, and you have to live with it. But that's not our society. That's not how we're created. Our country's created so that we can shift it to do good things, or we can shift it to do bad things. And so participation is key. But anyways, verse 5, whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing, and the wise heart will know the proper time and the just way. So if you obey the command, which we know that, it keeps you from evil. So being obedient at heart helps you. But this is what it says. If you have wisdom in your heart, you know the proper time and the proper way. So this is focus with timing and action. So wisdom provides you focus. You can see clearly. And then wisdom gives you the appropriate time and manner to take action. And this is important because you can be doing the right thing at the wrong time and it'll be taken as evil. You can be doing the right thing at the right time, but in the wrong way, and it'll be taken as evil. And so wisdom teaches you when and how to focus on the right things that matter the most. Verse 6, for there is a time and a way for everything, although man's trouble lies heavy on him. Verse 7, for he does not know what is to be, for who can tell him how it will be? He does not know what is to be. What does that mean? You don't know the future, and who can tell him how it will be? And nobody else knows the future. Only God knows the future. The Bible is the only prophetic book. What's funny is people talk about prophecy and they talk about Nostradamus and like these small nuance, like, oh, he talks about a tower. I loved this stuff before I was a Christian. I was like, ooh, prophecy. It is so ridiculous. And the only reason why it's ridiculous, now listen to me clearly. The only reason why it's ridiculous is because they take the writings of a man who wrote 3 sentences and they say, aha, prophecy. 3 sentences. If you look at the Bible, some like 60% of the Bible is prophecy. We're talking about thousands of prophetical details that have come to pass or is coming to pass in the future. And so we're talking about the future. We look at the Bible. It is astounding. God is the only one who knows the future. And he is the only one who declares it and causes it to be. But here, he's looking from our perspective, again, under the sun. I don't know the future, and you don't know the future. So what do we know? We know the present, and we know the past. So what does wisdom focus on? The present and the past. Wisdom says, I have been this way before. I know the consequences. I see the path in front of me, and I know that I have a choice to make, left or right. Those are both past and present. I know the places I've been. I know what has happened in history. That is wise to know. But more than that, I see the path before me. If I make these choices, these are the consequences or potential outcomes. So I focus on the present to do what is right and true and pleasing to the Lord now, not trying to focus on the future about what could be, but the choices I make now will make up my future. Verse 8, no man has power to retain the spirit or power over the day of death. What does that mean? One day you will die and you cannot prevent it. Hold on, but I have penicillin and I have antibiotics. Have you ever heard of biohacking? It's the pseudoscience that says if we can control every aspect of our life and implement certain actions, we should be able to extend our longevity longer than we could even behold. People believe that we can live up to, 150 years and beyond. And they quote some Bible things. I would argue that to say the life, the world, the atmosphere, everything is different from what we have now to what it was then. If you read Genesis, the planet was physically different before Noah's flood. And they lived a very, very long time before Noah's flood. And then after Noah's flood, something changed in the atmosphere, something changed on the planet. Long story short, you have Methuselah, and then Noah pretty much came around that time. And that was like the last time you hear of somebody living past 200 years. There is a level that we can impact our longevity and to live longer. But the goal is not just to live a long life. So if we just say life under the sun, as we're talking about Ecclesiastes, life under the sun, you can live a long, miserable life, or you can live a long, happy life. And I think we see that. There's old people who are running and they're joyful and they're young and spry, right? They're young in spirit, but also their bodies are also reflective. You don't hear about them falling down and breaking bones as often. And I would say that's the goal. It's not to live a long life. It's to live a well-fitted life. That you can live the last years of your life with joy and comfort, not in the sorrow of a decaying house, a dilapidated home that we would call our bodies, with no muscle, no strength, extreme discomfort. So I'd say that we can affect the last 10 years of our life, either good or bad, but the end of our lives will still come. And if we live to be 110, there's people who are living 105 right now. Like, it's not that crazy to live to 110. It's the question is, what kind of quality of life do you have? And keep in mind, it's all about the purpose. Are we fulfilling the purpose that God gives us? We're not just trying to live longer to please ourselves. We are here for a reason. And we can say with Paul, ideally, if we really and genuinely serve the Lord, we can say with Paul, I would rather go home to be with Jesus, but it's better that I should be here with you for your sake. So we are not trying to live a greater length of life for ourselves. It's so that we can impact the world for Jesus, to live for other people. But ultimately, we still can't conquer death. We still can't conquer death. Only one man can conquer death. Who's that? Jesus. Only Jesus overcame the grave, because where there is sin, there is death. And where there is no sin, there is no death. Jesus, being sinless, raised himself from the dead. He is the only qualified, bona fide, resurrected Savior. Bona fide. Now he goes on, he says, there is no discharge from war, nor will wickedness deliver those who are given to it. It carries the idea of a draft. Do you want to go fight in a war? Do you want to go potentially die for a cause that might not necessarily be your personal cause? So imagine that the draft is implemented and we have to go fight in Ukraine. That's what he's talking about. There is no discharge from war. There is no free will. You are drafted, you are called, you are selected, and you must go. This is a very common occurrence in the Old Testament. If you were called to war, you went to war. As young as like 13 to 15, like, you're a man now. A young man, you would be trained how to use a sword and you would go. We don't care how old you are, you go. We need bodies. Go. And if you don't go, there's problems. Then he says this, right, along the same lines, nor will wickedness deliver those who are given to it. When sin enslaves a person, it is like the draft. It is like being called to battle. You are being propelled to do things that you don't want to do, but you are under the command of another. It's called wickedness. When sin enslaves, you become a slave indeed. It is no longer about your will. You are surrendered to sin, wickedness, and evil. So once you let your guard down and sin steps in, you will slowly start to relinquish your freedom, one step at a time. Oh, is it not just a little sin? It's just a small compromise. I'll just give in for this moment. But it says, those who are given to wickedness. When you have relinquished the fight against sin, you will be enslaved. We are to ever be fighting against that. Freedom from sin is the goal, not freedom to sin. We have freedom in Christ, not to do what is evil, but to do what is good.
These studies are recorded live with God's people. We encourage you to find a study in a Bible-believing and teaching church and connect with God's people in God's Word. Have a blessed day.
Verse 9, all this I observed while applying my heart to all that is done under the sun, when man had power over man to his hurt. Man having power over man. What do we call that? Authority. What's the result when man has power over man? Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. When man is in charge of man, we can do amazing things. Like we can build buildings and skyscrapers and airplanes, and the authority is not the problem. It's the corruption of authority. It is what breeds all the violence and the hate and the chaos in this world. When you have a king who can get a hold of 10,000 soldiers and on a whim says, you know what? I'm going to invade Poland. You know what? I'm going to invade Mexico. That's their choice. When there is authority, it hurts man. So we have to have authority. It's important to have structures, right? We have authority structures in church, but it can destroy us. And this is what we observe in our lives. This is what we observe in the world. Then I saw the wicked buried. They used to go in and out of the holy place and were praised in the city where they had done such things. This also is vanity. So this is spiritual frauds. It's interesting because they're going to the holy place. What's the holy place? Yeah, they're going to the temple. Exactly. We're talking about the Jewish mindset. And so they would be going to God's temple to do what God commanded them. But you'll notice that he calls them wicked. He said, I saw the wicked get buried in the ground. They died. But what did their life look like? They looked like good people, but they weren't. They were wicked people. And so they were spiritual frauds. This also is vanity. Verse 11, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily, the heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. I came up with a little equation. Sin with a greater distance between the time of punishment equals a hard heart. So, if every time you committed sin, it was like getting stabbed with a needle immediately, how often would you commit sin? A lot less. But if you committed sin for 10 years and after 10 years you get stabbed with a needle, how often would you commit sin? You wouldn't even think about it. It's too far away. With swift action against sin comes a tender heart. Right? If we reverse the concept, if you crush sin at its root quickly, hearts can be renewed to be soft, pliable, and to be molded in righteousness. This is like good conscience. So a parent who is constantly correcting their children, teaching them and guiding them and punishing them and doing what they need to do, that child will have a soft heart and not be a thug or a criminal in our society. But a child that is never disciplined, that is allowed to commit evil acts and never punished, will become a criminal, will become a problem. I saw a video from Britain, and this young kid, there's this video of this kid, and he's on his bike, and like, I don't know what happened. It doesn't explain the whole scene, but this kid just starts like yelling profanities at the employees at this grocery store, and he gets on his bike and rides away. His dad sees it, takes him back to the store, and makes him apologize to everybody on video. And he's like, I didn't raise you that way, and it is not okay for you to do that. Now apologize to these people, and you will never come back to this store. And this kid was like 10 or 12. It's a good father. What did that child learn? Not on our watch. It is unacceptable to act a certain way, and you must change your actions if you're going to participate in this society. When you separate the consequences from sin, you decay and destroy society. Verse 12. Though a sinner does evil 100 times and prolongs his life, yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God, because they fear before him. So, is it possible for a sinner to live a very long time? Do you ever hear like smoking causes cancer? Have you ever seen like really, really old smokers? So the concept is we can tell people all day long, look, sleeping around will give you an STD. Look, being a sinner, you're going to get shot and stabbed. Being a gangbanger is bad. There's consequences. And you know what? Sometimes they just grow up and live a very long life. But those who fear the Lord, it'll go well with them. So he says, look, though they commit hundreds of sins, their life could be long. Yet I know this, that for those who fear God, it will be well with them, because they fear him. And so he's contrasting and saying evildoers versus God-fearers, they can both live long lives. There's not always immediate consequences to sin. And we saw that in the last verse. If we can implement consequences to sin, that's good. But sometimes sin goes unpunished and wicked people live a very long time. That's reality. Then he goes on and he says this, but, verse 13, it will not be well with the wicked, neither will he prolong his days like a shadow, because he does not fear before God. What is he talking about? What you sow, you will ultimately reap. Prolonged punishment. He's grasping at this concept of eternal punishment, that there is a punishment after life. Now, as we go through this, we're going to get into like chapter 10, maybe chapter 9, and you'll start to see where he's like, oh, when you die, you're just going to go down to Sheol, the place of the dead, and you're not going to know what's going on. And he's kind of like an nihilist at that point, right? He's not really expressing this idea of something that comes after life, but it's kind of the short end of the stick, that there's not much after this. Here, he's hinting at that concept. I think he's really grappling with the idea that, you know what, though we don't always see justice in this life, there will be punishment, some level of punishment. And if you fear God, there will be some level of reward. It will be well for those who fear God, and it will not be well with those who do not fear God. Verse 14. So let's read Matthew chapter 10, 10:29. So Jesus just said, if you're like your master, that's good. But if you're like your master, they're going to hate you. Because if they hated your master, they're going to hate you. Okay, so this is what he says after that. He says, so you have no fear of them, for nothing is covered that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. What I tell you in the dark, say in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny, and not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father? But even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. So everyone who acknowledges me before men, I also will acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I also will deny before my Father who is in heaven. So he talks about fearing God above fearing man, right? This higher authority. It is the fear of the Lord, and it will be well with you. And then he talks about here how God knows even the sparrows. What does it mean when a sparrow falls to the ground? It dies. It gets sick. Sparrows don't belong on the ground. It's not falling on the ground. They're flying, they're chirping, they're feeding their babies, they're getting food here, they're catching grubs. But when it falls to the ground, it's negative. God knows it. God designs it. He has his will. Fear him, and it will be well with you. So let's remember the story of the sparrow, and then we'll go back and we'll read this. Verse 14. There is a vanity that takes place on earth, that there are righteous people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked, and there are wicked people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. I said that this also is vanity. You have a righteous person who suffers as if he's an evil sinner. And you have an evil sinner who prospers as if he is a righteous man, a God-fearer. And this is what he says. I've seen both of these, and it's vanity. But think about it. That sparrow, how unimportant it is. And yet God is in control of every aspect of that sparrow's life. And the hair on our head, God is in control of every hair on our head. Our life is not an accident. Just because bad things happen doesn't mean you're unrighteous. Nor, if good things happen, it doesn't mean you're righteous. Like, oh man, I must have pleased God, I won the lottery. Nope. You can be a dirtbag and win the lottery. Or you know what? Your kid can get ran over by a car and you could be a God-fearer and a righteous person. And then he goes on. Verse 15, and I commend joy, for man has nothing better under the sun but to eat and drink and be joyful. For this will go with him in his toil through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun. What do you think the sparrow lives for? Survival? The next day? To literally eat, drink, hatch some eggs, sing a song. And one day it's going to fall to the ground. And that's okay. We are to be joyful because these are the days that God has given us under the sun. Verse 16, when I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the business that is done on earth, how neither day nor night does one's eyes see sleep. What does that mean? The business that is done under the sun, day or night, you don't get any sleep. So what he's saying is I applied myself to look, to see, to understand, and then the subject is not being able to sleep, that your eyes do not receive sleep. That's the subject of his thought, not the consequence of his thought. Sleep carries the idea of the end of the day. You've toiled, you've done your thing, and then you go to bed. That's the end. And then when you wake up, what does that mean? That's the start over. That's the beginning of your day. So if you never sleep, there's no ending. The cycle, the struggle, the weight, the burden, the toil, it never ends. Do you ever think about the day when you can retire? The day when you'll finally not have to work? The day when you don't have to do the things that you don't want to do and you get to do just all the things you want to do? Your future dream of all the things you wish you had, the relaxation, the peace, the quiet. Listen, it never comes. It never comes. In retirement, there's two things that happen. You keep yourself busy and you live your life like you've always lived it and you'll be fine. Or you stop doing all the things you've done your entire life and die in the next 5 years. You wither away. We have been given the task to toil, to work, to live, and that task will never end. When we get to heaven, there will be a new heaven, a new earth, a new body. And you know what we will do in heaven? Work. There will be toil. There will be purpose. There will be joy. There will be parties. There will be it's going to be this life 1,000-fold with none of the negative things and all of the positive things. So what he's saying is this: there is no rest in this life. We cannot escape from the difficulties, the toil, and the struggle. It's going to be there. And you know what? Take joy. Enjoy your food, your drink, your company. Relax. Take it easy. Life, it's hard, but it's not going to go away. Don't think that the grass is going to be greener tomorrow. It will be another difficult day. Verse 17, then I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. However much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out. Even though a wise man claims to know, he cannot find it out. So there's God's works and there's man's limits. And I've been intrigued with the sciences, like we were talking about, like longevity science and health science and exercise and body and even like creation science or atomic, like quantum physics science. It's always fascinating to read and listen and hear. And here's a conclusion I've come to. As much as we know, we have just scratched the surface, and we still don't know so much. We are so limited in our understanding. As much as we can sit here and talk about a black hole and all this different stuff, but we still don't understand it. Or what's in the ocean. You know how like we just discovered like giant squids? Giant squids have only been around for like 50 years. We used to think that they were myths, and then we finally caught a glimpse of one. We're like, ooh, look, we discovered a thing. We are so myopic. And no matter how much we study and the minute details that we get into, we are always discovering more. God's works they're infinite. They're limitless. You go as small as we can go, and we get into the atom and the proton and the electron and all this different stuff. We still don't understand it. You know, as an electrician, there's theories of electricity. There's three main theories about how electrons move. Did we pull one and they all shifted forward, or did we push one and it all pushed them all out? Or is it they are all moving simultaneously? We don't know. All we know is they move. And no matter how much we study it, it's always debatable. These are the works of God, and we can't comprehend them. So let's talk application. Wisdom is submission to authority. And it's short. Wisdom is submission to authority. In James chapter 4, verse 6, it says that we are to submit ourselves to God, and He will exalt us. There is no wisdom like that wisdom. It says, you are not God, you are not the king, you are not supreme, God is. Relinquish your will, submit yourself under Him, obey Him, follow His commands, and it will go well with you. We also learned about true religion, that the fear of God is the core. Fear Him, not man. If He cares for a sparrow, how much more does He care for us? If we fear Him, we don't have to worry about our tomorrow. He is counting the hairs on our head. If we fear God, it will go well with us. And yes, we might get sick. Yes, we might have tragic events in our lives. Yes, we might be stressed out and have a difficult life. But it is valuable. It is worthwhile. True religion is the fear of God. And then our knowledge is limited until we get to heaven. It says when we get to heaven, 1 Corinthians 13 says that right now we are looking in a dirty mirror. We are trying to perceive what the world looks like around us through a dingy, polished piece of metal, and we're struggling to see it. But when we get to heaven, we will know as we have been known. It carries the concept that we will have the knowledge that God has. Could you imagine Him revealing all things? He's like, oh yeah, remember how you guys were like arguing about how I created in 7 days? This is how I did it. Look, watch this. I'll just do it again. Watch. Let there be. And then everybody's like, light. We're just right there with the Lord, speaking it in existence. Not that we have the power, but simply involved, just joining Him in the fun. That's the joy that we get to have. Yes, we don't know about this life. We don't know all the questions we want answered. We don't know the facts and the details about His Word or heaven or what our new body's gonna look like, or why cancer happens here, or how that happens there, and why this here. And yes, lots of people believe and say lots of things, but you know what? We don't know. It's always debatable. Here's the fun bit. Science is always debatable. If you stop debating it, it's no longer science. You're taking the facts and trying to interpret them. If you stop debating it, it is no longer science. So it's always debatable until we get to heaven, and then it's relatable. Next week, we will talk about death, the destroyer, Ecclesiastes chapter 9.